Apu's no stranger to robbing his customers.
$24.95?
And he's no stranger to them robbing him.
Don't move, dude.
With all the chaos going on day to day in Springfield, how does the Kwik-E-Mart even survive? Is it really a sustainable business, or is it running on fumes? Well, we're about to find out, because today I'm crunching the numbers to see exactly how much the Kwik-E-Mart makes in a year, starting with the yearly sales. The Kwik-E-Mart is supposed to be Springfield's resident convenience store, and for the most part it is, but it's hardly the cheapest store in town. In fact, Apu's known for his price gouging.
How much is your petty candy?
Surprisingly expensive.
That's nothing. You should see how much he charges for milk.
How much is this quart of milk?
$12.
Probably the best but worst example of Apu hiking up his prices comes from the episode I Love Lisa, when Homer forgets to get something for Marge on Valentine's Day, so heads to the store.
I need a Valentine's gift for my wife.
Perhaps this might be appropriate?
How much?
$100.
And like a sap, Homer pays the man his money and agrees to keep shopping there.
All right, but I'll never shop here again.
Nickel off on expired baby food.
Sold!
So with Apu's prices, we've got to figure out how much your average customer would spend. Thanks to the season 16 episode A Star is Torn, we know that no item in the store is cheaper than $5.99.
What's the cheapest thing you've got? 2-ounce bag of chips, $5.99.
The NACS, the governing body of convenience stores, states that since 2020, the average shopper usually has 10 items per shop. But that's for your average supermarket, not a small-town convenience store with tons of competition. So, to be fair, let's say that the average Springfield resident is putting 6 items in their basket. And if everyone was buying the cheapest thing in the store, you'd be looking at $35.94 per customer. We know that the Kwik-E-Mart inflates prices across the board, so for argument's sake, let's add another $5 to that average, taking us to $40.94. Now we gotta figure out how many customers go into the store on your average day. We know that Springfield has 60,000 residents, give or take a few hundred, and we know there's other better priced stores in town.
That's a good price for 12 pounds of nutmeg.
Great selection and rock bottom prices.
But still, the store is a convenience store, so people pay higher prices to get their groceries closer to home. Doesn't mean he won't lose business to these other businesses, but clearly Apu's still getting a decent number of customers a day. The NACS also state that your average store which sells fuel would have around 1,100 customers a day. Now, I'll talk about whether the Kwik-E-Mart has fuel pumps or not in a sec, but I think it's fairer to say, due to the size of Springfield and how the store is usually pump-free, that it has around 600 customers a day. Considering the prices, though, I think it's a little fair if we take that down to 450. So, let's multiply $40.94 by 450 to get the rough daily sales average of $18,423 a day, or $6,724,395 a year.
Yes, here's your lottery ticket. Thank you for knocking over my inventory.
Now that sounds like a hell of a lot for a store of Apu's size, but again, he also charges 4, 5, sometimes 10 times the price the other stores do. Another thing I should mention is that a few times throughout the show, the Kwik-E-Mart is seen to also have gas pumps.
16 brand new gas pumps. At last we can compete with the gas and gulp.
But it's a little too inconsistent to keep track of, so for the ease of working things out, let's just say the Kwik-E-Mart is a convenience store only. So we know the store makes nearly $7 million a year, but how much of that does Apu get to keep? Because surely running the Kwik-E-Mart takes a pretty penny to keep going, so let's talk through his expenses. In terms of workers, Apu is pretty much the only worker that the store has. We find out in Homer and Apu that he's no stranger to working super long hours.
You once worked 96 hours straight.
Oh yes, it was horrible, I tell you.
Even when you're clocking in 96-hour weeks, you still need a bit of help around the place, and from time to time, Apu does get that, thanks to Sanjay, his younger brother.
Wrap on your bulletproof vest, Sanjay. It's time for another bank run.
All right.
Now, Sanjay is rarely in the store, and I doubt he's even paid. But just to be cautious, let's say he does 8 hours a week, which includes working in the back and stuff like that. In terms of pay, he'd be on the basic minimum pay of $7.25 an hour, so that's $58 a week, or $3,016 a year. Also with convenience stores, there's usually a big turn in stock, weekly refills, bulk buying, and stuff like that. An average store the size of Apu's would usually spend around $3,500 a week making sure their shelves are full, throwing out any old expired products to make way for new ones, which we know Apu doesn't do.
Ooh, expired ham.
Yep, he actually sells that ham that expired like 6 years ago. Well, 6 years when the episode aired, and you'll never guess who bought it.
Meat! Ooh, this one's open.
It's not a one-time offense either.
Oh no, it is encrusted with filth. Let's sell it anyway.
And you'll never guess who goes and buys it.
One hot dog, please.
My point is, Apu clearly doesn't order tons of fresh stock every week for the store. He keeps things in-house until they sell. That doesn't mean he isn't getting things in regularly. Not everything he sells is congealed and rotting, so I'd say he probably only spends about $2K a week on restocking the store. In terms of the cost of the facility, including things like rent for a small town store, utility bills, and any cleaning he has done to the store, is likely to set him back $4,000 a month because he's probably going to opt out of having insurance or any in-depth cleaners. In terms of maintenance, that's things like making sure the equipment within the store is up to a good standard, any plumbing and electrical problems, keeping away pests, that sort of thing. Businesses usually set aside 2 to 5% of their annual income to deal with stuff like that. Again, as this is Apu, I'm going to say that he only sets aside 1%, so that'd be $67,243.95 towards maintenance a year. There's one final set of expenses for Apu to account for here, and that's his franchise fee. Yep, you forget, but the Kwik-E-Mart name doesn't belong to him.
Apuna Hasapima Pedalan, you have disgraced the Kwik-E-Mart Corporation.
The usual franchise fee a convenience store would pay is somewhere between the 4 to 12% mark on total income. As we've seen, Apu's a pretty shrewd businessman. I can't imagine he's paying a lot more than the low end of that estimate. But for argument's sake, let's say it's 5%. So that would be another $336,219 you'd have to fork over. So if we add up everything we've mentioned in his expenses, we know that just to keep the doors open and lights on, Apu would need to spend $558,479 a year. But this figure is really standard stuff, and we know that Springfield is far from standard. Although the Kwik-E-Mart is clearly popular, it's popular with some terrible people because it's by far the one store in the town which criminals target the most. It can start pretty small, like the time Kearney tries stealing some ice cream sandwiches.
If you tell me where you obtained it, I will overlook the ice cream sandwiches concealed in your armpits, eh?
Instead of overlooking the theft of Apu, you need to stamp it out, call the cops, or ban him from the store. Otherwise, he's just going to come back time and time again and steal more and more. It might start with ice cream sandwiches today, but tomorrow it'll be giant drums of squishy. So if the kids see no problem in stealing from Springfield, the adults certainly don't. Like the time Krusty held Apu at gunpoint.
Hand over all your money in a paper bag.
Yes, I know the procedure for armed robbery.
Krusty actually ends up being arrested for armed robbery. After doing some snooping, Bart realizes that it's actually Sideshow Bob who robbed Apu's store, dressing as Krusty to frame him.
Krusty didn't rob that store. Sideshow Bob framed him, and I got proof.
The giveaway was the size of Bob's feet compared to Krusty's, but either way, justice is served. Krusty is released and Bob is sent to prison. Although I wish I could say justice was served for all the other robberies at the Kwik-E-Mart. As you guys know, Snake's usually in the store causing trouble.
Help, police!
Hey, I got problems of my own right now.
Well, when I say causing trouble, I mean robbing Apu at gunpoint. There's literally countless examples, like the time Bart wanted to buy a squishy that was all syrup.
One that's made entirely out of syrup.
When Snake's not around to harass Apu and Sanjay, there's other criminals on hand to make sure the Kwik-E-Mart hits its daily robbery quota.
Hand over the cash and don't try any funny stuff.
Hey, pal, I assure you, if I tried any funny stuff, you would be in hysterics.
With all these robberies happening, you'd think that maybe Apu would try and combat the criminals with a security system. Well, that's exactly what he does in the episode of Marge in Chains, but it's not a criminal that gets caught. Basically, Marge is exhausted by her family. Everything is getting on top of her because her family is sick, and she accidentally steals a bottle of bourbon.
Mr. Simpson.
After dealing with Snake and the rest of the criminal underworld, Apu doesn't hold back with Marge and tries to make an example out of her. Plus, the cops show up, and considering they're not the best at catching criminals either, they come down hard on her too.
The foreman will pass the verdict to the bailiff.
But while Apu and Sanjay are busy testifying in court, they leave the Kwik-E-Mart unattended. Marge ends up getting released for good behavior, so at least it's not all bad. With robberies happening all the time in Springfield, Apu must have set aside a robbery fund, surely. Unless someone's taken that too. But let's just say he does have one and hasn't been stolen. How much would he need? Well, as frequent as they're shown in the show, it's not realistic to say he loses all of his cash every day, otherwise he'd just have shut down the shop. But let's say that $10 of goods are stolen every day by kids.
Now don't you kids take anything. I'm watching you. I've got eyes in the back of my head.
That's $3,600 $650 a year that'll need to be replaced. But what about the main robberies? Well, not every robbery is successful or grand, but as we saw when Bart bought the squishy, Snake had a big bag of money, so when they're successful, they're pretty darn successful. A store the size of the Kwik-E-Mart would usually only keep around $300 in their cash register, and if we estimate that there's 2 successful robberies a week, that comes out to $31,200 a year. That's just raw cash though. That doesn't take into account any smashed windows, ruined produce, or anything like that. As for instances like when Snake stole the whole store, that set Apu back $550,000 to rebuild and fully kit out another one. But that happens once in a blue moon. So we'll just split that $550K up by how many years the show's been on air, which is 35 years. So really we're gonna count $15,714, which takes Apu's yearly robbery total to $46,914, which considering how much he gets robbed, doesn't sound half bad. Usually they'd have insurance covering that and the stolen goods as well, but with the amount that's stolen at his store, I doubt the insurance company would give Apu any coverage. When Apu's not dealing with criminals and thieves, he's got to deal with actually living in the town of Springfield, a town known for its freak accidents. Because if you hadn't noticed, some crazy things happen from time to time, like when the squishy machine malfunctioned and flooded the whole store. Or like the time Apu got gas pumps fitted to fight back against a new business rival and this ends up happening.
If there's some way to get rid of Flanders, would you want to come back?
Yeah, I did just get hit by mortars. Usually though, the store gets rebuilt in the next scene or something, but that's not the case for our next freak accident. The time a police tank came crashing through the store window. Apu not only loses his store, but loses his entire livelihood.
We gave him one last look at it. Roll away the photo!
Weekend Fresh. Who spells quick with a Q?
Turns out the store is being run by his nephew Jay, and Apu doesn't like how he's running the new place.
Check out our olive bar. He doesn't care what he eats. He just eats things in that location.
This is my store. Mine and Sanjay's.
To try and get his store back, Apu becomes addicted to lottery scratchers, and obviously they all lose. That is until he finds a lucky penny and scratches one last time.
Sheldon? 3 Sheldons!
So Apu buys out the land from his nephew and reopens the Kwik-E-Mart so he can get back to doing what he loves. It also means that he can serve his favorite customers again: Homer, Moe, Chief Wiggum.
Because it will take all of my faculties tomorrow to affix my name tag the right side up.
Better get buying those scratchers again, Apu. To be fair though, some freak accidents in Springfield can actually benefit the store. Like when a hurricane was about to rip through the town and all the citizens started panic buying. Literally rip everything off the shelves, and the only things left are, well, I'm not even sure Santa's little helper would eat it.
Creamed eels? Corn-mog? Wadded beef?
You can see what I mean though. Like, while Apu does have to deal with the store potentially being destroyed, sometimes those freak accidents can be a good thing. Although usually they're not. So, how much would Apu have to set aside as a rainy day fund just because he lives in a chaotic town like Springfield? Well, the squishy machine flood would probably set him back 17 grand for the repair of the machine and the cleanup of the gunk. When his place gets mortared, as we know, Apu's gonna have to fork out the 550 grand to get the store replaced, which is the same for both of the tank crashes. So, to rebuild and fully stock his stores, Apu would have to spend $1,650,000. So, I think to be on the safe side and to make sure there isn't anything he's missing, Apu would need an emergency fund of at least $1.8 million to cover a year in chaos in Springfield. I know that's a little more than we showed, but better safe than sorry. So with that in mind, it's time to add up everything together and look at the final total. So for sales, Apu on an average year would make $6,724,395. For his everyday expenses across a year, we'd need to take away $558,479. And then for the robberies, we'd need to subtract another $46,914. So already we're now down to $6,111,002. But then there's the yearly emergency fund, which we just set at $1.8 million. And I know he wouldn't need to always dip into it, but to balance out any overinflation in his sales, let's just say that he does set aside $1.8 mil every year, which would take his total income to still a pretty big $4,319,002. But we've forgotten one big thing: taxes. taxes. And look, I know Apu cuts corners, but not even he'd be stupid enough to dodge his taxes. And I'm sure the company that owns his store probably has him audited now and then too. For ease, let's just say that he gets taxed the federal 21% on his earnings, which means he'd have to fork out another $907,620.42. So our overall total for how much the Kwik-E-Mart makes in a year is a mammoth-sized $3,411,382.58, over 3 times the amount of an average small-town convenience store. I guess Apu is raking it in.
The dream police, they're going to arrest me now. Oh no!
Man, I'm in the wrong game. But then again, I don't really want to have to deal with potential robberies and my store being blown up. Anyway, that's all the auditing I've got for you today. If you want to check out some more Simpsons stuff, then head on over to our channel, or if you're wanting to go straight into another great video, then click the one popping up on screen right about now. And as always, thank you for watching.